So we've been talking about needs and self-transcendence and how when we have needs and when we become aware of needs, that it leads to self-transcendence and transcending our ego, and how need is our virtue. And so today what I want to talk about is actually something a bit more practical in terms of like recognizing our needs, because as I talked about, you know, if need is a virtue, one of the things I feel like oftentimes we don't recognize is how difficult it is to recognize what our needs are, or how oftentimes we don't realize what our needs are. And I feel it's because of the nature of what a need is, why it's actually so difficult to recognize it. And so the first thing I'd like to say is that one of the complexities of a needs is that actually we have multiple needs going on all at once, right? So one of the key things I gave was the example of the Maslow's hierarchy of need, which is you have the physical rung, you have the security rung, then you have the belonging rung above that, you have the self-esteem rung, the self-actualization rung, and then the self-transcendence rung, the one on the top. And I talked about how they are happening concurrently. Now, this idea that they're happening concurrently is vague. It's conceptual. And so I'm going to see if I can actually just bring this home, because I feel like when people get that, people have an aha moment where the people are like, oh my gosh, oh, it's like a light bulb goes on. And so, now I talked about the three main needs in general, which is your instinctual needs, your emotional needs, and your intellectual needs. And then, if you really want to, when the three combine, you have a spiritual need, and you could call it the fourth need. But really, actually, just to begin with, just kind of looking at what your instinctual needs are, your emotional needs are, and your intellectual needs are, is actually a really good start. So, but even as we're talking about this, isn't this interesting how, we have to talk about all these multiple needs? And I think the difficulty is that they're all going on concurrently. So in any given moment, if needs are happening all concurrently, and your needs are your system's way of trying to keep your system in balance with the rest of the universe, and it is happening right now, it's not about the past, it's not about the future, it's something that's happening right now, then, because right, like you can't correct the need in the past, your need is actually happening right now, right? If that is the case, then how do you recognize your needs, and what does it mean that they're happening concurrently? And practically speaking, in any given moment, what happens if you're not physically feeling comfortable? If you're not healthy and if you're not physically feeling comfortable, what you'll notice is that it becomes really difficult to pay attention to anything else. If you're in a lot of pain, it's a great example, then it becomes very difficult to pay attention to whatever is going on. Now, we can learn to have such focus that we can still keep our attention on whatever it is we need to do. But on the whole, our awareness actually goes down because our attention gets pulled to our pain. Now, we did talk about how pain is nature's way of letting us know that our system is off balance, whether it's an instinctual pain or emotional pain, and if you will, an intellectual pain, meaning as in you can't solve the problem. But having said that, so in these different pains, the pain that we feel is instinctual, physically painful, or it's emotional, like you have negative emotions. And it's nature's way of letting us know that our system is out of balance. So at the physical level, if you're physically not comfortable, then your system is off balance. So that's one thing. So in any given moment, you have to be comfortable. Now, in any given moment, you also need a certain amount of order. You need a certain amount of predictability. Even if you're physically comfortable, if someone just dropped you off in a complete new environment where you've never been before, where you don't speak the language, let's say for instance you've never been to China, and you wake up and all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of China, you don't speak the language, you don't know anything about the culture, you're going to find it very difficult. And so that's order, predictability. Like you have a certain amount of predictability. And so, like you know the rules, you know where the resources are. You have a certain routine. that you can follow. You know what comes next. It's basically, security is about predictability. And so you need a certain amount of predictability to be able to function. Even if you're functional, even if you're physically feeling good, you can't use it if you don't have a certain amount of predictability. So you need a certain level of predictability right now, right? And then you need a certain level of connection. You need to know that you have people that you can depend on. You need to know that you're part of the group. You need to know that emotionally the people that you're with are connected. So if we use a China example, let's say, for instance, you kind of figured some things out, you found some rules, but you don't know how to connect to the people there. That's not going to work, right? It's going to be disastrous. So it's relational predictability, you could say, is connection. But really feeling connected is more than that. It means that you don't feel alone, and that's a very important emotion where you feel emotionally loved, and it's the foundation of happiness, where you feel like you belong. And so in any given moment, when you don't feel like connected, like say, for instance, at work, then you feel uncertain, you feel anxious, or you may not even feel like doing the work. So you need a certain level of connection. And then above that is performance. So esteem has to do with performance. Can you perform well? Do you feel like you can do well and get recognized for it? If you don't feel like you can do well, if you feel like all the time that you're always failing and you can't ever succeed, you can't ever win, that's terrible, right? Even if you feel connected and people love you regardless, and like where the resources are, what your routine looks like, and you know what the rules are, and you're physically healthy, but every day you get up and it's just not gonna go you're not gonna perform well. That doesn't sound very good, right? So you know that performance is a need right now. When you did something and you know that you did it well, we feel good about that. And then right above that is meaning. Feeling like you have impact, like what you do matter. Not only do you do well, but it matters. If, let's say, for instance, you do it really well, but no one knows about it, and you have no impact, including yourself. Let's say, for instance, you may do that's one thing well, but it has no impact on yourself or anyone else. Then it will feel useless. It will feel like there's no impact. It will feel meaningless. And so we know that without meaning, there's no reason to live. There's no reason to wake up in the morning. And so really a good example of this is, sometimes when people can't connect to this, I say, what if I promised you that you could live forever? You'll be healthy, you'll be physically in top condition forever, for the rest of your life. However, there will be no meaning. Would you choose that life? And so far, I've yet to meet someone who says yes to this when they really understood what I was saying. Actually, you know what? I don't think I've ever had anyone not understand this, now to think about it. In short, I've never had anyone say, yeah, I want that life. I just want to be alive and have life feel completely meaningless. And so what that shows us is that feeling meaning in this moment is really important. And then self-transcendence, the stage above self-actualization, is about gratitude. It's about service and being. I talked about service and being, where you're beyond yourself. Like now you know what makes you feel meaningful. You can perform. You feel connected, and you feel there's order, and you feel physically good. Then you don't need to think about yourself anymore. You can transcend yourself. You can just serve without having to think about yourself, right? But there's an interesting feeling that comes when you're in that place and you feel gratitude. And so gratitude, when you feel gratitude, it is the fullest receiving mode, and also ironically also the fullest giving mode. When someone is grateful to you, they're receiving, but isn't this interesting? When someone is really grateful, you also feel like you're receiving from them. And so we know that gratitude is this interesting emotion that allows you to feel connected, and where it's both receiving and giving. It really is the emotion of just being. And if you don't feel gratitude for your life is really not really worth much. You won't feel any joy. And so if you look at the studies done by Brene Brown, the author of The Power of Vulnerability and Daring Greatly, you will see that that the people who feel the most amount of joy consistently, from her research, it shows that, or people who are grateful. And so it kind of shows why, traditionally people have been have been saying in the spiritual arena that gratitude practice is the most important practice. And also why in one of the videos I created, I said that if there was one practice that I would recommend, it would be inventory taking, which is actually a form of gratitude practice. And so I just kind of wanted to just say this. So in one moment, which one of these can you afford to not have? And this is actually how we know our needs, because in any moment, if one of these needs go out or few of them go out, those are your needs. And the reason it becomes so difficult is because what I find is that any situation where more than one go out, then your needs are not very clear because there are multiple needs at the same time. So let's say, for instance, you're physically not feeling good and you don't feel connected. You have order, but you don't feel connected. And you're not feeling grateful, but you're performing. And you might have impact, but you don't feel grateful. Then you have multiple things going on. You need gratitude. You have a lack of gratitude. You have a lack of connection, and you have a lack of physical comfort. And so, like, that's one example. So whatever it is, so if the more you're missing, the more you'll feel like you just don't know what you want. And the reason is because you actually have multiple needs, and some of them have a higher priority than not. So now if only one is missing, then you can say, oh yeah, I'm hungry. It's like the first rung. Okay, no problem. Oh, you know what? I just need to plan a little bit, and then my head on will be straight. Or it's like, I just need to hang out with some people, right? So if you only have one need, that's okay. But if multiple of them go out, that's where the complexity starts. So that's one thing. The other thing that I feel like that increases the complexity of not recognizing your own needs is that when we are trying to think about our needs instead of feel our needs. And so I'll talk about that more in the next video. Thank you.